Good morning. Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee and Chat with Hallee Bridgeman. I'm so happy you could join me. I have my cup of coffee, so I hope you have a cup of coffee or tea and you have a few minutes while we chat. So welcome to Monday, August 10th. Today is the first day of homeschool for my boys and for Greg and I. I'm so thankful that he's home because he has embraced this as much as I have, and it is going to be a collaborative effort between the two of us. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our homeschooling journey and explain to you what we're doing. So back when Kaylee was 9, Scott was born, and that's when I quit working full time. And I wanted to homeschool Kaylee, but she had been, a daycare baby and then in public school, and she was really actively involved in, she was in 4th grade when Scott was born and loved her teacher. She had an amazing teacher. And I just really pushed for homeschool, and she really pushed back, and Greg and I prayed about it, and we decided that would be fine. She can stay in public school. And so we supplemented all of her education with our education too. So Greg is an expert in scientific creationism, and we did a lot of critical thinking exercises with her and a lot of supplemental learning on top of the education that she was getting in school. We have, family dinners every night. And so we would sit and talk about specific things and help counter a secular humanist worldview that she was receiving partially in school with truth. And it was a good balance. And she rocked the balance. And she came out of school and then college, even a public university, knowing truth, showing love, being the hands and feet of Christ, and never once faltering in her understanding of who God is, and that this is a world that he created, and who Christ is and his purpose coming to earth. So fast forward to Scott turning 5. So we didn't have Scott's autism diagnosis until he was 9. However, we always knew that we wanted to homeschool the boys. And so because they didn't have the same beginning as Kaylee, they would have been completely integrated into the concept before anything. So we intentionally redshirted Scott because he was a preemie born in July. He should have been born in late September. And in a lot of school districts, he wouldn't have been born in time on his due date to have, to be able to start school before he turned 5 anyway. So we went ahead and just redshirted him. So he actually started kindergarten. So he started preschool when he was 5, and he started kindergarten when he was 6. So I preschool homeschooled, and then started kindergarten homeschool, and realized very quickly that I was not equipped to teach Scott. I didn't have the education it took to know how to shift teaching style to reach a special needs, non-neurotypical brain. And so we put him in a private school, which was assigned to our church. However, that kindergarten teacher didn't like him there, and he brought the class down, and she set him up and set him up and set him up and set him up to have meltdowns daily until I was staying at the school waiting to go intervene in a meltdown. And the teacher wouldn't meet with us. The administrator was the only person who would meet with us. And soon, 2 months into school, they had him kicked out. And so we were kind of between a rock and a hard place, and we didn't know what to do. And so we enrolled him in public school, which was beyond the best decision for him at the time, because it put him into a classroom with a teacher that had been part of an IEP meeting that we had with the private school. The way that Kentucky is set up, a public school, administrator and a public school teacher have to be part of an IEP meeting for a private school special needs. And so we had spent a lot of time with her and had talked to her, and she had expressed a desire, like, I wish Scott was in my class. And so when we went to enroll him in that school, she gladly accepted Scott into her class and loved him. And he had one single meltdown the rest of the school year, and it was a pretty bad one. They called me and I had to come to the school, but that was it. There was no more after that. So Scott was in public school all the way through 7th grade. By 2nd grade, I had learned enough from the teachers that I knew I could teach him now. However, my career as a writer had started taking off, and the way that I write, my brain does not allow me to, it did not allow me to go into the fiction world that I create if my children were home with me. And so I had to choose between continuing to write and grow this explosion of success that I had, or put a stop to all of it and go to homeschool. And Greg and I prayed about it and decided that what we needed to do was focus on my mission field of readership, because Scott was receiving good education from teachers. We had an issue with a 2nd grade teacher, pulled him out of that school, put him in a new school, everything was fine. And we have had nothing but good things to say about the county that we're in now, because every time we've had to like fix an issue, it's been fixed. It's like we've gone in and they've fixed it. Even, I mean, the issue shouldn't have been there. Yes. However, they were willing to learn from us and be educated and then fix the issue. And I'm sure that it paved the way for, a smooth transition for other kids later. Okay. So we haven't had any complaints. However, this past Christmas, we went to the Creation Museum and the Ark, as is our normal Christmas tradition. And Scott had, who is very black and white, and he couldn't distinguish between teacher authority teaching this thing and God's truth teaching something that said different. And we are creationists. We're young earth creationists. We believe the Bible is true. We believe what God says is true. We believe Christ's words, who affirmed creation. And so Scott was really adamant that his teacher's words in the text of his school book countered our teachings, like we did with Kaylee, and what he learned at the Creation Museum. And driving home from the Creation Museum, Greg and I were like, we need to get him out of public school. We need to get him into an environment where a teacher is teaching truth with a text that's filled with truth that doesn't counter our worldview. So remove him from secular humanist worldview and enough to give him a foundation of truth so that it can probably not affect him too bad as an adult, which is terrible to say, but you're not dealing with a neurotypical brain, you're dealing with an autistic brain. And we knew that. So, I mean, we were like, we have to bring him home. But again, we're saying, you're an incredibly successful author. You've never been able to write with the boys home. You've never tried because you can't. Right now, this is where God has you. And so what we need to do is focus our prayers on what God would have you to do. And then COVID hit and the boys came home and I was in the middle of a deadline. And suddenly my children are home and they're interrupting me regularly all day, which is fine. I'm not complaining. And I kept getting interrupted, helping them with school, coming back to work and getting back into my book. And I had never, ever been able to do that before. So I don't know if it was my creativity shifted or because they're older, like my brain let go of that restriction of, oh, children are home, I can't go into the fictional world where I actually require an alarm on my phone to go pick them up from school, because sometimes I would lose my whole day in my fiction world. It was like my brain released that hold and let me, because they're older now, so they can come to me and open my office door and say, I'm on fire or something. And they have the words to use. And Greg is home. You know, Greg has been home as much as they have, which means there's another parent who is available for them to go to in the case of an emergency. And my brain knows that. And so my brain lets me go into my fictional world. And I don't know which it is. I have no idea. But something clicked with me and we were able, and so it wasn't that, so we are strictly isolating. We are still masks, gloves, hand sanitizer. We don't travel. We're still doing church from home, but we're doing school at home because now we know we can. And because it's always been what we felt was important. And it is something that will fix Scott securely in truth as he enters into his last 5 years of education prior to college, primary education, his last 5 years of primary education. The sciences that are so deep into creation and God's creation and the earth and, you know, the universe and beyond, all of that stuff, when the education about them are immersed in creation, then everything else, like it's like evidence of it all. And so that's what we want we want him to learn those things. And Jeb too. I'm not discounting Jeb. I could have had Jeb home this entire time. And Jeb could have stayed in public school this entire time. He's like Kaylee. He understands that this is what the school is teaching. However, this is truth. And we could have supplemented his education and he would have come out of it fine with no worries. But Scott wasn't. And so we are so very thankful in the midst of terribleness, you know, in everything, give thanks, Philippians tells us, that we had an opportunity to see that I could create and still administer their education like I did from March to May. And it wasn't a detriment on my schedule. It wasn't a detriment on my creativity, and the household just ran smooth. And it will continue to do so because God always equips you for what you need in the time that you need it. And so what he has equipped Greg and I with right now is this movement of schedule, this fluidity in our home, and with my creativity and his work and his creativity, and then the boys' education it's all working. And it's going to continue to work because this is what he would have us to do right now. And we know it. We absolutely know it. If COVID fell from the earth, dissipated like it came, and no one had to wear a mask again, we would still continue to homeschool. So ours is not a reaction. It's just a glad tiding. So happy Monday to you. I will see you next week. And y'all have a great week. God bless you.